This is the Realty Classroom Podcast, episode number 196. You might not know that you're a taker. Are you a real estate agent who wants to turn your real estate job into a business without sacrificing your lifestyle, but you just can't seem to find the right plan or any plan to help you do that? Well then, hey, you are definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the Realty Classroom and the host of this podcast, and help you take immediate action to get started in that better direction if you're already in the business, or the right direction if you're just getting started. I've created a free jumpstart for you that's waiting at freeagentgift.com. It's a nice one-page infographic. I try to make this simple, chunk it up, so that you have a plan that you can begin to etch out for yourself and follow. I wish I had this a long time ago, because it's exactly the business model that I use to this day. I teach top producers, I teach beginning agents, whatever. You need a plan, and I want to share it with you, at least at the wireframe level. freeagentgift.com. All right, let's get started. You might not know that you're a taker. This was a hard lesson for me to learn, that I always thought I was in the service business, and I had gotten into it because this was the single largest financial and emotional transaction most people would ever make in a lifetime, and that I could really affect some positive change. So I liked it. So I saw myself naturally as a giver, and that this business was attractive to me because I could give. I could give help to people and help them achieve. Well, I think what happens over time, and you get busy at something, I got very transactional. And I started to try to help more and more people. In my mind's eye, give. But I just think I was starting to take. I was really just going through these transactions, and I don't know that I was giving enough. I mean, deals were getting done. People were getting good prices when they were selling with me. They were getting good prices when they were buying with me. I felt that the business was working well, but something was off. And back some years ago, now probably about 10 or 11 years ago, I did a reset. So in other words, I want you to imagine this arc. In the beginning, I was giving. I would just give enormous amounts of service. People were greatly, appreciative of that effort. I was happy. They were happy. But over time, as I started to do more and more without a plan, I was doing everything on muscle, and what was dropping was the service ball, right? I just wasn't there, and I was taking them, I think, more than I was giving to them. That's my own conclusion. Not necessarily did I hear that, but I felt it. I have pretty good intuition. I could tell it wasn't the quality business I had once given. So I reset, and here's what I did. First point, I recognized that the most powerful business marketing concept is to give away your best stuff for free. Now, you might hear this all over the internet to this day, but it's been around for a long time. The concept of giving away your best stuff for free triggers the law of reciprocity, which is really the law of gift giving. So fundamental to this concept of being a giver versus a taker is the law of reciprocity. So if you want to really root yourself or ground yourself in this gift-giving mentality, then you have to recognize that that's actually one of the most powerful marketing concepts, to begin the process of marketing the message that you are out there as this giver. But really, how do you do that? Well, you give away your best stuff for free. Well, what does that mean? It sounds absurd, right? Imagine, and I think what happens in the mind is we think about something that's been productized, and I'll get into that in the next point. We think about somebody giving a car away for free, for example, an automobile dealership. It sounds insane. That's their best stuff. How could they give that away for free? Well, that's not necessarily what they're giving away. They're giving away some sort of information about the product, coupled with service and insight about how that product works. So it's really information and insight that we're really giving away. And in any business, whether it's pure service or pure product, you can productize your best stuff. That's the second point here, right? So the first one is to understand, I've got to give away my best stuff for free, but how do I do that? And again, most people have a panic attack when you say that. And I had fallen into listening to a lot of people say, well, I'm not going to do that unless they sign this buyer-client contract. That's when buyer-client contracts were proliferating. I wasn't going to serve anything. I wasn't going to give them anything. And when I went to a seller presentation, you would hear, well, I wouldn't give them that analysis. I wouldn't let them know what I think the price is. It's this weird taker's mentality that at the extreme sounds like that. So how do you expect to do business with people if that's the way that you meet them in any context, early on in the process, at a presentation, at a first meet and greet, whatever it might be, it's really repulsive when you slow down and you think about it. I'm telling you how I felt. I felt repelled away from doing business with me if I started to think like that. I'll tell you, luckily, I didn't fall into the extremes. But I was going into my listing presentations, for example, and I was doing a lot of talking about how I did things, and it wasn't a lot of interacting. And I know that there was some education base in there, but I wasn't really giving it away in some sort of productized way that when I walked out the door, they could then continue to consume it, learn from it, be empowered by it, including if they decided not to do business with me. That's a key point here. Including if they decided not to do business with me. So here I was resetting based on the gift-giving principle. I was also saying I have to be able to give this gift away without expecting anything in return as far as the business. And that's going to be a tough pill to swallow, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to trust that these immutable or unbreakable laws of human behavior are going to be there for me. That if I trigger the law of reciprocity, I will trigger an inbound flow of people that are at least interested in doing business with me, better than having to wake up every day and drink a pot of coffee and go out there and take it and get that business. Not that that doesn't work. It does. I mean, in lieu of not seeing any other competitor who gives and empowers, most people will do business with an aggressive taker, and they'll probably be okay for the most part. But I just didn't like that because I didn't feel like it was something you could teach to agents as I proliferated my coaching program, as I grow my brokerage across the country and into other countries at this moment. I just didn't see how I could get there. So what I needed to do is say, okay, slow down. What is your best stuff? And so that's where I started to deal with the pushback you would get from people's mindset that, well, if you give away your best stuff for free, they don't need you. Okay, fair enough. But what if we just start with our best what to do stuff for free? Because in the real estate business, if I give you what to do as a seller and what to do as a buyer, you still have to make a decision how you're going to do it and with whom you're going to do it. So I all of a sudden got above the process and said, oh, that's logical and that makes sense. So what I did was I productized my best what to do stuff. So I sat down. My favorite spot at the time was going to Starbucks, getting a big cup of coffee so I could really focus. And I started off with just the bullet points of the process of how somebody buys a house and really buys a house, not all this hocus pocus and all this weird training out there. But I just started to imagine, how do I take buyers through the process on a regular basis? And I started to just plot those points down. And then I reorganized them. I chunked them up, simplified them, and I had 6 bullet points. I did the same for the sellers. And I just did this big A through Z, chunked it up, and had 7 points. So I started very simply by productizing this into an infographic. That's the first what to do information, and it was my best stuff. If I was going to educate a buyer, these are the 6 bullet points in this order I really wanted them to understand. And as a seller, these were the major 7 immutable steps that I was going to take you through because that's the way the business really works, and I want you to understand those. Then I went deeper. I took the 6 points on the buyer side, the 7 points on the seller side, and I wrote 4 bullet points that were critical under each one of those. And then I wrote paragraphs, small ones, for each one. And guess what I had done? I had productized the entire buyer process and the entire seller process. And it was really, the way I wrote it was what to do with or without me. I turned it into a nice cardstock magazine looking product. I didn't overwhelm it with me stuff inside. Sure, I put some pictures of sold properties that I dealt with. Sure, I had a call to action that you have, that you can go and look and see some of the featured properties that I've sold. And if you want to see that, because you're listening to this in a coaching concept on this brand, you can go to my other brand, The Griffin, and you go to thegriffin, griffin.co. You can go there and see my featured properties. So I put 1 page of those in and a call to action to get to the page. That's it. Everything else is what to do as a seller with or without me, what to do as a buyer with or without me. So I'd productize my best stuff. Then The next thing was, okay, so you have this, but now I have to learn the language of giving is the third point here. How do you learn the language of giving? Isn't that just a spirit? No, there are systems really potentially out there to be built for everything. And I've probably become at this point in my career systems obsessed. Because good old Michael Gerber in his book, The E-Myth, really talks about eliminating human discretion, meaning your choice. Don't leave it to your own choice in the heat of the moment, especially. Leave it to a system. And the system comes from experience. So you build a good system based off of the way that things actually work, not the way you perceive them to work, not the way somebody tells you, but the way they actually work. And that comes from having some experience. So when I looked at, for example, the seller program, I considered what's the language that I would need to talk to an expired seller, a canceled seller, a withdrawn seller, a for sale by owner seller, an internet evaluation seller, a referral seller, a seller who walks through an open house. Those were all different contexts that were going to need a systematic way to introduce my best what to do information for free. So I realized pretty quickly I couldn't just give away, I could, but for the magazine or the productized deepest dish version. So I had, remember now what I said before, I'll go back and reiterate. I had an infographic, which was really just a one-pager. And then I had the fully articulated courses or plans. And then I needed to say, well, how do I introduce these things? So I considered context. And on the buy side, it's, am I talking to an internet buyer, a referred buyer, whatever it might be for an open house buyer who walks through. Somebody I just meet who wants to buy. So a seller who's also buying. So there are all these contexts that are going to need language, I thought. So we sat down on the sell side, especially because I will highly recommend that when you listen to me, one of the things I should have adhered to is that the way this business works is off of listings. If there are no listings, the business structure collapses. So those people who go out and control listings by getting them, putting them into the MLS, have far more leverage than those people just accumulating buyers. They're both important parts of the business. I want you to productize your best stuff for free, what to do stuff for free on both sides of it. But I want you to think sellers first, because you'll be in a much better power position to grow a business that's sustainable and predictable. Needless to say, we said, okay, we have to give this, for example, to an expired listing, and we know their context. So everything I referenced, the types of sellers and types of buyers, remember the word context. A buyer is a buyer is a buyer, a seller is a seller is a seller at the very foundational or immutable level, okay? That's just what they are. They've made the decision, they're motivated to do so. But the context is language. And if I just call an expired up, this is what I didn't like about what a lot of people do with expireds. They would just call up and say, when are you going to hire the right realtor? Or, this weird, obnoxious stuff. But ironically, sometimes it works. But that just wasn't going to work for me and the brand and the way that I wanted to do it. So I thought, what if I could quickly introduce myself to an expired seller the right way? Introduce who I am professionally. Use systematic language that I know works. The word because is one of the most empowering trigger words in the English language to get somebody to lean in to listen to what you have to say. Hey, this is Danny Griffin from Griffin Realty Group. The reason I'm calling you is because they would lean in. I noticed your context. Fill in the blanks. I noticed your beautiful home online, and I noticed it didn't sell. So I'd like to send you some information that will help you sell it the next time. May I do that? Very simple. And that was the language that changed the complete direction of my business. But it's how I arrived at thinking through that. I'm not going to get into all the details of how I do that, why I do that. I don't even want to get into a debate with you in your mind as to whether or not it works. It works. It's what we use. It's what we teach. And those people that learn it and they use it, it works. Is it easy to train the brain to say the exact words the exact way and understand why? No. That's why training is a huge part of what we do at the Realty Classroom, not just coaching. Coaching is listening to the anecdote that happened in the field and correcting it against the training, which is learned against the system. Okay? Coaching supported by training, learning something routine, and that routine is memorialized in a system. That's the formula we follow here, and it really, really helps. Saves a lot of time, a lot of aggravation. So we started to learn that language, and it worked. Now, let me just finish this podcast by saying, and getting into the fourth point here. Asking for what you want, because ultimately I know I don't want to leave you at the point that you're just giving away all this stuff and there's no business coming in, right? That would be absurd. So this is still about how to attract business. It's just a different way to do it than the way you might have been doing it, than the way that I was doing it. And I would never go back to the other way. Hear what I'm saying? 22 and a half years, almost 23 years of doing this in the field as an agent, then a broker owner. I still run my own book of business. And I've coached all the way from super top producers to entry level. They all make similar mistakes, by the way, from the beginner to the big thumper that you think is doing so great and they're not. Okay. Really, to understand the punchline, why we want to do it this way, is that asking for what you want is actually easy after giving information that empowers the prospect. This is a huge takeaway from me. And we obsess over the systems to make sure that we're doing this. What I mean is that when we start off by giving this information, by the way, let me just give you a little pro tip here. What we realized that we had to give away was not just the infographic and the fully articulated plan. We needed to give away 5 or 6 properties that had sold with pictures and details and maps so that they could indulge in a little bit of candy or what they want. All sellers want to know what's sold around them. They want to see the pictures, details, and they don't get it as easily as you think they do. So part of your productization is going in and curating that out of MLS and putting it in with your plan. The other thing is we also do a 1-page infographic, a summary of how the market's actually doing statistically, days on market, average price, etc. So it becomes a product sandwich. It's not just the plan that gets productized, it's those other things. So it's really a product sandwich. The meat and potatoes, per se, are the buyer and seller plans, but you put the lettuce on there, which is the pictures and details of the properties, and then the tomato is the market update, right? So you have an image in your head of making this hamburger a certain way. So that's what we do. And once we gave that to them, then depending on their timing, we would follow up and we would update that same information. Or we would give them more insight about that information because now they're getting ready. Hey, could you come to my house? I love the plan and I love the information that you continue to send, because when you're sending information in the future, you don't have to send anything other than the latest market update, the latest sold properties around them, and give them any insight on the tips that they need to prepare their house for sale or to prepare to buy the house, the best house for them at the right price. It's not rocket science when you're doing this. And as you do that over time, what's happening is the strength of the relationship with you and that prospect is building. So now you're giving away not just what you gave away productized in the beginning, but you're continuing to do it. And this is when I think digital plays a bigger role. I'd rather give the stuff physically than follow up with digital and the phone calls and all of that go along with it to build the relationship. But then when I want to ask you to go see some houses, the relationship is there already. It's you feel empowered by us, and it's logical that you would want to go see houses with us. And we don't use buyer-client contracts. We don't believe that we need to lock you into a relationship. You're either in one with us or not. We might ask you verbally for that commitment and say, look, we put a lot of time into this. We just want to make sure that if you're considering other realtors, we're aware of that so that we compete properly and we can properly win this business and win your loyalty. It's okay to say that. And if you want to put them in a contract, great, but you better arrive at it this way so they see the value in doing that, or they'll cheat on that anyway. They'll break that in a heartbeat, right? So what happens is I'm building this list of prospects this way, and they're coming in. And they're coming in predictably, sustainably. I'm not waking up one day fretting I don't have any business. They're just coming in. And that's the way this works. So let me reiterate. You might not know that you're a taker. You might assume, like I did, I was giving. 4 points. 1, the most powerful business marketing concept is to give away your best what to do information for free. 2, so how do you do that? Well, you productize it. You turn it into a physical product and a digital product, but especially a physical product that you can give away and expect nothing in return when you give it. 3, but you have to learn the language of giving in the context within which you meet different types of sellers, different types of buyers. 4, by asking, or when you go to ask for what you want, it's easy after all this giving because your prospect has been empowered by you. All right, I'll summarize it by saying it this way. The most powerful marketing plan focuses on giving away your best stuff for free. Although that might send a rush of fear and panic through most real estate agents, they should realize that they're already doing it in some form or fashion. So, however, they have to realize also that the process can be formalized into a business model by doing what? By productizing your what-to-do information and then giving your insight about that information until your prospects are so empowered by you that asking for the business becomes easy and expected by the prospect. All right, remember this. I tell you this all the time. You can take immediate action and get started in the right direction with a free, simple business plan. That wireframe, it's my best what-to-do information for free. Freeagentgift.com. If you do nothing else but go over there and download the infographic for how this business works, you'll see exactly what I work from. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. We also post our content on YouTube, so don't forget, go subscribe over to the Realty Classroom channel. We'd also appreciate it if you would share our content with other real estate agents just like you so they get the help that they need. But heed the warning. Nobody's coming for you. Nobody. So go get to work on your own business, and we'll see you in the next episode to help you do just that. Thanks.